Namaskar, good evening to everyone. You are welcome in our continuous integrative health education series by Yoga Scholars PGI MER Chandigarh. Today we have a guest from NIMHANS. NIMHANS stands for the National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience. So we have a guest, Dr. Hemant Bhargav. He is an MBBS. He is a MBBS, MD, MD in yoga and rehabilitation, and he is MSc in psychology, PhD in yogic science, and currently he is working as an assistant professor of yoga, Department of Integrative Medicines, NIMHANS, Bengaluru. He has more than 64 research publications, including 255 Google Scholars citations. In these, H index is 10 and I index is 11. And as a PI, he has received three government funded grants like DST, Ayush, and currently he is working in a Satyam project grant. And so, on behalf of Yoga Scholars, I welcome to you, sir. Please present your topic, sir.
Thank you very much, Shant. Dear all, I am really grateful to PGI for giving me this opportunity. I will share my slides with you. So the topic of my presentation is providing you an overview about the research work that we have done at NIMHANS Bengaluru. The research work at NIMHANS in the field of yoga started way back in 1980s, where Dr. Desi Raju, who was the head of department of the neurophysiology department, he started a project Consciousness. And it is during that time that the initial research was done. Basically, this research focused on comparing long-term meditators with non-meditators on different neurophysiological parameters, including the polysomnography. So in this project Consciousness, what basically emerged was that the sleep quality is different between meditators and non-meditators, and there could be different states of consciousness that could be demarcated in those researches. Further, there were studies showing the effects of different meditative techniques on autonomic functions, and it was understood in the time when the effects of yoga on the human physiology, we were just understanding it, and then some leads came that it may be causing the shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic. But then currently we see that NIMHANS has now a formal department of integrative medicine, and this department has been we have been able to get this department because of the pioneering effort of our current director, Dr. B.N. Gangadhar. Dr. Gangadhar is the professor of psychiatry and the director of NIMHANS. He, from the last 10 years, have been working into the field of applying yoga into mental health, and our research work, which started with Project Consciousness before in 92, then there was a pause. Further, in 94, when Dr. B.N. Gangadhar took a project in collaboration with Art of Living Foundation, Shri Ravi Shankar ji, and did a randomized control trial understanding the effect of Sudarshan Kriya Yoga on depressed subject. It is with this that in 96 our research was once again started. We continued to do research in depression, and then Dr. Gangadhar's interest was also in understanding how yoga may benefit people suffering from schizophrenia, people having cognitive impairments. So these are the domains in which we have been doing research in the last 10 years. And I'm going to give you a brief summary in next 10 minutes. So the researches that we have done explored various biological, neurobiological markers, which basically a lot of studies have been done on neuroimaging parameters using functional MRI, but we have also done studies on autonomic functions and the EEGs. This is the article which was published in Financial Times London, where the reporter came from UK, and she wanted to understand what research are we doing, and she was very fascinated by one project that we did here, understanding the neurohemodynamic effects of chanting the sound Om. So this particular slide shows you what effect did we observe when subjects chanted Om. So here 12 healthy subjects were trained in chanting Om in such a way that they chanted O for 5 seconds and Ma for 10 seconds. And that they continued chanting this sound in a sets of 10 times. And the same subjects also followed blank and then a control breathing where they produce the sound S. So the S sound served as the control because it did not have the vibratory component of Om, but the breathing rate was matched. And then when we analyzed the data, we found that as compared to the control and the rest conditions, when the subject chanted the sound Om, there was a deactivation of a particular region of the brain, which we now understand it as the midbrain area, the amygdala. So amygdala and certain anterior cingulate cortex, these areas, there was a deactivation. Now, what is the meaning that if you can say that a limbic area is getting deactivated by chanting Om, even hippocampus is a part of that. So the clinical implication is that in depression, we use a certain method where electrically we stimulate the auricular branch of the vagus nerve through the ears, and it causes the limbic deactivation. Now, this limbic area of our brain is the area which gets hyperactivated when we are having certain kind of negative memories, we are having anger, rage, frustration, or craving. In such situations, this area gets hyperactivated. So the Om was able to calm down this area of the brain. Just by chanting the sound Om for 10 times, this effect could be produced. Then this is another research which we did using a device known as the FNIRS device. In the beginning, you saw the reporter wearing a particular cap. So this is the device which can measure the oxy and deoxyhemoglobin changes in the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And here on 18 healthy subjects, we observed that when they performed Kapalabhati pranayama, Kapala means forehead and Bhati means shining. So actually we were wondering why sages gave this name to the practice when actually it involves just flapping of the abdomen. It has nothing to do with head. So, but when we assess the data of the subjects, you can see here that the red and the blue are the pre and post scores, but the green is the during score. So subjects performed Kapalabhati, this flapping breathing. This was performed at 120 strokes per minute, means 2 strokes per second for 1 minute. And what we observed was that there was an increase in the oxygenation in the prefrontal cortex. Now this prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain which is associated with decision making, which is associated with your ability to plan. And it also sends inhibitory signals to the amygdala, the lower brain areas which generate impulsive behaviors. So how yoga is working on the brain is, it is calming down the negative excitatory areas and it is activating the areas which perform higher brain functions and which give you control over your behavior. So in that way, yoga may be able to regulate the behavior. So this graph actually simplifies how yoga is working. This is the amygdala, which is, you can say, the dopamine pathways. If the dopamine increases in this region, during reward, motivation, compulsion, this area gets completely activated. You get angry, you get frustrated, all this area gets activated. This is known as the go area. this particular area of the brain, the prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex, this reduces impulsivity, enhances cognition and your discrimination of what is right, what is wrong. The viveka aspect of your personality comes from this area, the ACC and PFC. So what is happening is Kapalabhati is activating this area and Om chanting is deactivating the lower area. So yoga activates the stop switch control, the vairagya, and it deactivates the hyperexcitatory areas of the brain. And that way, yoga may be very, very helpful, especially in youngsters, because it is now proven that when you are under the influence of some substance, like some drugs, or you take alcohol, it is this area of your brain that completely gets knocked out. Then we realize that the person completely loses his status and then he starts behaving like an animal. So the animal instincts are coming from below here. And the upper area is getting knocked out by the substances. Yoga is strengthening this area and weakening the lower areas. Now, the research that started in 1996 led down to this publication. It is a major publication where we were actually able to demonstrate that 4 weeks of Sudarshan Kriya Yoga practice was as good as the drug imipramine in reducing depressive symptoms. Both of them were though inferior to ECT. So here in mild to moderate depressed subjects, Sudarshan Kriya was as good as the antidepressant medicine. So these are the week-wise graphs and these are their scores on the Beck's depression inventory, how you can see that they are reducing down, and this particular is the SKY group. This research is not done by us, but I would like to highlight this research here, that similar research has been done in US by University of California, San Francisco, where Dr. Sudha Pratikanti also demonstrated that yoga as a monotherapy is better than health education attentional control group in reducing depressive symptoms in mild to moderate depressed subjects. So now this is the talk that yoga can be used as the only therapy for people who have mild to moderate depression, and medicines may be required when the depression goes into the severe category. Especially when suicidal ideations are there, you will require medicine, but in mild to moderate cases, yoga itself may be good enough. So these are the results which Dr. Sudha Pratikanti got. So at the end of 8 weeks, you see that the yoga group had a significantly lower levels of depression than the control. Then later on, we wanted to understand, okay, yoga is reducing depression. What may be the mechanism through which yoga may be working? So what we did is we performed this research dividing subjects into 3 groups. One was only yoga, second group was yoga plus medicine, and third was medicine only. And we assessed their depression scores through psychometric scales, and we also measured their cortisol levels. Dr. Tirthalli, who is a professor of psychiatry in the Department of Psychiatry, was the lead researcher here. And what we found here is very, very interesting. The subjects there were some 30 to 40 subjects in each group. They were given this yoga program, and we observed that all the 3 groups, the depression scores reduced. But as you can see here, the cortisol levels reduced only in the yoga and yoga plus medicine groups, but they did not reduce that much in the medicine group only. What does this mean? That when you give medicine also, your depression comes down, it goes into your brain and reduces the depressive symptoms, but cortisol levels are not reducing. It means that the underlying stress is not getting removed. But when you are adding yoga as yoga only or medicine plus yoga, you are not only reducing your depressive symptoms, but you are also removing the underlying stress by reducing the cortisol. Now, this carries a very important clinical implication, because if the underlying stress is not reduced, that there are higher chances that when the antidepressants are stopped, then there may be a relapse. There may be a recurrence of the depression. So probably if you add yoga along with medicine and then slowly you continue taking both and then prepare your system and remove the stress, when you have to stop the medication, you can continue yoga because it does not have any side effect, and probably then the chances of relapse may be prevented. Also, we performed another research where we measured BDNF. BDNF is the full form is brain derived neurotrophic factor. This is a marker of brain neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity means the ability of your brain to form new synaptic connections in response to any insult. This BDNF and neuroplasticity is known to be reduced in subjects suffering from depression. So here we were able to demonstrate that a regular practice of yoga of 12 weeks was actually able to increase the BDNF levels in the brain, along with reduction in the symptoms and reduction in the cortisol. So therefore, yoga improved the ability of depressed subjects in making new synaptic connections. So this may be the mechanism through which yoga is helping depression. And we also observed there was a negative correlation between BDNF and cortisol. So as the BDNF levels increase, the cortisol levels reduce. Then the other area of research which we have focused on is cognition. We know that this problem of dementia, Alzheimer's are increasing, and in the future they are going to reach epidemic proportions. So we wanted to explore whether first yoga is helpful in enhancing cognitive functions in elderly. So here in this study, elderly population was followed up for 6 months and a validated yoga module was taught, and all these measures of cognitions were assessed at the baseline and after 6 months. And what we observed was that in 120 subjects were actually divided into 2 groups. And then what we observed was the yoga group led to a significant improvement in their cognitive functions, especially the learning, memory and attention aspect of the memory through RAVLT. Whereas the waitlist group, though improved marginally, but there was a significant difference. Similarly, another test of memory, the trial making test, which is responsible for executive functions, also showed an improvement. Then in a small subset of these subjects, we also performed a brain scan. We measured their hippocampal volume before and after 6 months of yoga. Now, naturally, as the person ages, there is a tendency for the brain to shrink. Even the hippocampus shrinks with aging, and it shrinks much more rapidly and severely in patients who have Alzheimer's. So here we could demonstrate that not only the regular practice of yoga stop the normal process of regression of the hippocampus, but actually there was a marginal increase in the size of the hippocampus of the subjects after 6 months of yoga practice. So by that way, we may hypothesize that if people who have mild cognitive impairment or those who have mild dementias, these subjects also should be benefited by regular practice of yoga. We have started some research in this domain already. Third area in which we have worked is understanding the biological effects of yoga in schizophrenia. We initially performed a couple of randomized controlled trials. First one was on outpatients, and then the next one was on inpatients. In these trials, we actually measured how yoga can help schizophrenia. Initially, we were skeptical whether yoga should be of any value there, but surprisingly, we observed that stabilized patients of schizophrenia responded to yoga very well. They were quite adherent, they were quite punctual, and though medications were helpful in reducing positive symptoms, which yoga did not help much, but the negative symptom is a big problem in schizophrenia. When people have psychotic episodes and they are given antipsychotics, what happens is that they become less aggressive, but at the same time they become vegetative. They stop mingling with people, they remain completely socially withdrawn, they have apathy, they cannot express their emotions, they speak less. So those kind of problems are very difficult to treat by medications. Here in our research, what we found was that yoga improved the negative symptoms very well. And then further, we wanted to understand how yoga may be improving these symptoms. So we measured in a small sample, 15 and 12, we measured their oxytocin levels. Oxytocin is a hormone which is responsible for mother and child bonding. So it may be responsible for increasing their social bonding. So we found that as compared to weight-less, yoga group had a significant improvement in their oxytocin levels as compared to the baseline value. This was observed after 1 month of 1 hour yoga module, which was given 5 days per week. We have actually validated yoga modules for depression, schizophrenia, cognitive impairment, anxiety. All these publications are available in PubMed. Then this is a research which is not done by us, where Streeter et al. Demonstrated that a single session of yoga, Iyengar yoga, of 1 hour was able to increase a neurotransmitter GABA in the thalamus of the brain. Now, this particular neurotransmitter is responsible for bringing a calming, balancing effect in the whole body, in the whole nervous system. If it becomes low, you tend to become more agitated, more restless, more anxious. Similar to this research, we used a device known as the transmagnetic stimulation device, where you stimulate the premotor area of the brain and there is a twitch on the thumb that comes. Before the stimulation and before the twitch comes, after the stimulation, there is a period of complete silence that is known as the cortical silent period. Now, the length of this period is an indirect marker of the recruitment of GABAergic neurons. So if the cortical silent period increases, it means that more beta GABAergic neurons are getting recruited there. So what we observed was that the yoga practitioners had higher cortical silent period as compared to non-yoga practitioners. So GABA may be one neurotransmitter which is responsible centrally for producing the calming effects of yoga. Now, this particular graph shows our research where we compared depressed subjects, healthy subjects, and those depressed subjects who performed yoga. So you can see that the cortical silent period is higher in healthy, it is low in depression, it increased slightly after walking, but in depressed subjects, in depressed subjects post yoga, the increase is much more as compared to walking, and the depressed subjects are going closer towards the healthy subjects. So therefore, these are various biological mechanisms through which we have found how yoga may be working. Another way in which yoga may work is by activation of mirror neurons. So at the base of the prefrontal cortex, there are a set of neurons. You can see here the highlighted part. These neurons are unique to primates. You might see monkeys follow this. Whatever you do, the monkey also does the same. Those neurons are there in human beings also. So I smile, you also feel like smiling. If I sneeze, you also get a tendency to sneeze. So such things are done by the mirror neurons. They are responsible for social connect. So what we did is we speculated that these particular neurons may be responsible for the bonding that schizophrenia people are able to develop by performing yoga. Interestingly, schizophrenia is a disorder of disconnect. Schiz means split and phrenia means personality. And yoga, the word comes from the root yuj, which means to unite. So in schizophrenia, the personality is getting split, it is getting disconnected from the society, whereas yoga as yuj is uniting them back. So that it is doing by increasing oxytocin levels and increasing the mirror neuron activations. In fact, one of our recent researches now we are able to show that in schizophrenia, the brain circuits also are disconnected. The longer circuits are not very well connected to with each other, whereas the shorter circuits are too closely bound. But we were able to see that in the resting state, there was much more harmony in these circuits after performing yoga. So yoga is bringing the harmony in their brain circuits also back. So finally, I would like to conclude by summarizing the work that we have done. The biomarker effects of yoga in mental disorders. First is yoga may elevate the GABAergic tone. Second, yoga may improve the mirror neuron activation, and that is how it may improve social bonding. Third, yoga reduces cortisol levels and increases BDNF levels in depression. Yoga also increases oxytocin in schizophrenia, and that is how yoga affects the brain, enhances neuroplasticity. And chanting mantras, especially the sound Om, deactivates the limbic structures of the brain. So overall, in mental health, in Dr. Shirley Telles's paper, you see this figure where the 8 limbs of yoga are producing the biological effects by down-regulating the HPA axis, reducing the cortisol, altering various neurotransmitters, enhancing the BDNF levels and the immune functions by reducing psychological stress, causing various activation and deactivation of various brain areas, and harmonizing the default mode networks and the resting states of the brain, bringing parasympathetic dominance, and thereby clinically translating into reduced depression, reduced anxiety, reduced negative symptoms in schizophrenia, enhanced cognition, sleep, and attention. So this is the summary of the effect of yoga in mental health disorders, done by Nimhans. Finally, the Department of Integrative Medicine looks towards integrating modern medicine with the traditional systems of medicine. How? What should be the approach to integrate these two? So I describe it by using the example of a football team. So these people who are in the front row are the people who are center forward, who are aggressive and who attack. They are the people of biomedicine, the modern medicine. And then these people standing behind are the people who are defense, who prevent the goal. And probably here that various Ayush systems, yoga, Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, homeopathy can come together, and then we can use the best of the East and the best of the West together as an integrative medicine for the welfare of the humanity. Finally, I would like to acknowledge our director, the pioneer of all these researches that we have done, Dr. B.N. Gangadhar. Dr. Shivrama Varampalli is my mentor. He is the head of the Department of Integrative Medicine at present. I also thank Department of Psychiatry in collaboration with whom all this research was done by the Nimhans Integrated Center for Yoga. Dr. R. Nagratna and Dr. H.R. Nagendra are my yoga gurus from S. Vyasa Yoga University. And this is the team which has worked together in bringing these results. Thank you very much to all of you for your patient listening. Please send your feedback to yogaforstress.nimhans@gmail.com. I would be really happy to get back to you and reply to you if you have any queries. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing these amazing research papers on mental health and scientific yoga, scientific aspects of yoga in mental health. Sir, I have a question. Sir, what is how yoga works in drug addiction? What is the scientific mechanism behind this?
Okay, so if you look at the published literature, the mechanism is something which has not been explored much. But there are researches which are showing that yoga reduces the severity of drug dependence in alcohol and tobacco addiction. Whereas in opioid dependence, like in heroin addiction, it can improve the quality of life. And there are chances that people become negative for drugs at the end of 6 months or so if they perform yoga regularly. There is a medicine that they give in heroin addiction known as buprenorphine, which is actually a opioid agonist, a moderate opioid agonist. So we are actually doing a Satyam funded project on opioid dependence syndrome, and we are measuring the endorphin levels of these subjects. So endorphin is a chemical which is generated by your own body. It is also a opioid. Heroin is also a opioid. So we hypothesize that if a person who is dependent on heroin can generate his own opioid within him by increasing endorphin through yoga, his dependence on external opioids will come down. So this is a mechanism that we have proposed. We are still collecting the data. We have done it on 30 subjects. Second mechanism through which yoga may work is, as I showed in my slide, that yoga may activate the prefrontal cortex and thereby improve their willpower. And yoga may deactivate the hippocampus and amygdala region, which generate craving. When you crave, the lower brain areas become overactivated. When you get a cue, like if a drunkard sees a wine shop, he gets a cue and he gets the craving by seeing that. It happens when there is overactivation of his amygdala. So yoga, by chanting Om, the amygdala is getting calm. So anybody who is addicted to anything, there are researchers showing that slow, deep abdominal breathing also is able to reduce cigarette craving. So anybody who wants to come out of these cravings, I would recommend to do Surya Namaskara regularly, 8 to 12 rounds. Perform rigorously the practice of Kapalabhati. They should do 100 strokes per minute for 200 to 300 rounds, giving 1 minute gap in between. Then they should do Bhastrika Pranayama. 20 strokes per setting, give 1 minute gap, and then do it again 20 and again 23 rounds. So 60 strokes of Bhastrika, and then they should perform sounds A, U, and Ma and feel the vibration of that sound in the body for 21 times. So 8 to 12 rounds of Surya Namaskara, Kapalabhati 300 strokes, Bhastrika 60 strokes, and then chanting Om 21 times. This particular thing, if you do in the morning 20 minutes, you will see that your tendency to use substance will reduce. Okay, so probably this neurological and biochemical mechanism through which yoga may work.
Sir, thank you, sir. Some of our viewers also thanking you. They are sending greetings for you. Rita is saying wonderful, vast research data and lots of interesting as well as valuable information sharing is really amazing ones. And sir, it's a really a beautiful approach for the present as well as for the new generation. Thanks a lot for sharing these amazing session. And another comment is awesome, wide ranging and crystal clear information, also quite useful and appropriate. This one I also wanna say, sir, you make learn us in a very simple language with these amazing slides. Thank you for sharing these slides. And some Jitesh Jariwala is a wonderful completion. And Rita is sending greetings, and sir, many other persons, me too, and some other sending greeting for you. Sir, on the behalf of Yoga Scholars PGIMER, I want to also thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We are actually conducting some sessions for people for well-being during COVID-19. So those sessions, you can log into nimhansyoga.in and see our updates. We have also uploaded our research papers there. Anybody wants to see these research papers, they are available at www.nimhansyoga.in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.